The hum was the first thing. Not a sound that traveled through the air, but a vibration that resonated directly in the bones, a subauditory thrum that bypassed the ears and settled deep in the chest. It was the song of the universe being held still, and Dr. Eris Thorne felt it as if he were the tuning fork. He stood on the suspended observation gantry, a catwalk of grated metal and hardened light that hung like a spider's thread over the cavernous heart of the Armstrong facility. Below him, bathed in the sterile, shadowless light of quantum dot panels, lay the culmination of his life's work, the sum of a planet's desperate ambition. Project Starfort. The name was a placeholder, a focus-grouped banality for a project that defied simple labels. Below him, the core chamber, a perfect sphere of diamond laminate composite, floated in a web of magnetic containment. Inside, there was nothing, a perfect vacuum, chilled to a whisper above absolute zero. Yet, the nothingness pulsed with a light that wasn't light, a soft internal luminescence that shifted from cobalt to a violet so deep it was almost black. It was the visual echo of a profound and silent transformation of the very rules of existence. Still looks like an overfunded lava lamp to me. A voice drawled from behind him, the sound grating against the sacred silence Aris held in his mind. Aris didn't turn. He knew the sound of Director Valerius's expensive synth-leather shoes on the grated floor. He also knew the practiced cynicism that dripped from every word, a defense mechanism for a man who understood budgets but not breakthroughs. "A lava lamp heats wax, Director," Aris said, his eyes fixed on the core. "We are currently generating a localized, stable pocket of space-time with a temporal delta of 0. There's a slight difference in scale." Valerius came to stand beside him, his portly frame encased in a suit that probably cost more than Aris's entire education. He gestured dismissively at the readouts, shimmering on the gantry's holographic interface, cascades of numbers and symbols that represented a new language being spoken between humanity and the cosmos. Temporal delta of 0. You wild-eyed dreamers and your poetry. What I see is a power bill that could bankrupt a small nation and a glowing ball that hasn't done a single thing we can sell. The board is getting nervous, Aris. They hear Superweapon. They expect a bang. All you've given them is a hum. The laughter from the technicians in the control pit below was muted by the gantry's acoustic shielding. But Aris saw it in their shoulders, in the way they glanced up at the director and then quickly away. They were the best minds of their generation, quantum physicists and temporal engineers, but they were still human. They still responded to the authority of the man who signed their paychecks. Their skepticism was a reflection of his, a professional caution that bordered on outright disbelief. They were witnessing the impossible, and their training screamed that it was a trick, an anomaly, a miscalculation. Aris zoomed in on a specific data stream, a complex spiraling pattern that looked less like physics and more like a piece of generative art. "It's not a weapon, Director. We've been over this. It's a shield, a fortress, hence Starfort. It anchors our position in the continuum. Imagine a ship in a storm. A normal vessel is tossed by the waves. We've built an anchor that latches onto the seabed of reality itself. Nothing can move us unless we want to be moved." "An anchor," Valerius scoffed. "The Vraxen Consortium has planetary defense grids that can slag a dreadnought from 2 astronomical units out. The Kelvar can fold space to move their fleets like chess pieces. We have an anchor. Forgive me if I'm not impressed." "They won't be able to fold space anywhere near us," Aris said, his voice quiet but firm. "Their navigation systems will see this sector as a solid object, an immovable wall in the fabric of space-time. They won't be able to get a lock. Any projectile weapon, no matter how fast, will experience such extreme time dilation as it approaches the field that it will effectively never arrive. It's the ultimate defense. Unbreachable. Theoretically, Valerius grunted. Show me. That's what today is for, Director. Stage 3 activation. We're going to increase the field radius to 100 kilometers. The system is stable. The core is humming. A young technician, Elena Rostova, her face pale with a mixture of excitement and terror, looked up from her console. Her voice was tinny over the gantry's communications. Dr. Thorne, all pre-sequence checks are green. Core temperature is nominal. Energy flux is stable. We are go for stage 3 on your mark. Aris took a deep breath, the hum in his bones a steadying presence. He could feel the weight of history, of the generations of scientists who had been laughed at. Copernicus, Galileo, Zephram Cochrane. They had all pushed against the boundaries of the known, and they had all been met with skepticism. He looked at the glowing sphere, at the impossible, beautiful light of a captive star, and gave the order. Mark. Initiate stage 3. The hum deepened, a resonant bass note that vibrated through the very rock of the underground facility. The light in the core brightened, and the intricate webwork of energy on the displays began to expand, to propagate outwards. It was a slow, controlled process, a flower of reality blooming in the void. The technicians watched, their professional skepticism melting away into pure, unadulterated awe. The numbers scrolling across their screens were nonsensical, beautiful heresies against the established laws of physics. Then, a klaxon blared, a single jarring note of panic in the symphony of creation. What was that? Valerius snapped, his composure instantly evaporating. Elena's voice was tight with strain. Sir, we have a feedback surge. It's not from the core, it's external. Someone is trying to push back. On the main screen, a new pattern appeared. A jagged, angry red line slicing through the elegant blue spiral of the Starfort field. It was a brute force attack, a digital battering ram trying to smash its way through the system's firewalls. Impossible, Aris breathed. Our systems are isolated, completely air-gapped. Apparently not gapped enough, Valerius roared. Shut it down. Shut it all down now. We can't, sir, Elena cried out. The attacker is using the activation sequence itself as a carrier wave. They've locked us out. If we try a hard shutdown, the energy backlash could destabilize the core. The jagged red line pulsed, and the entire complex shuddered. Lights flickered. The hum in Aris's bones became a painful, discordant shriek. The beautiful light in the core chamber sputtered, turning a venomous, sickly yellow. The anchor was slipping, or was. Far beyond the chaos of the hidden Earth facility, in the cold, silent expanse of the Kuiper Belt, a figure watched the data stream on a holographic display. The figure was cloaked in shadow, their ship a ghost, running on passive sensors and bleeding heat into a massive, frozen asteroid. They were known only as Null 8, a name that was less a call sign and more a statement of purpose. To be nothing. To return all to nothing. Null 8 watched the red line of their attack code slam against the Terran system. The elegance of the Earth device was insulting. Humans, with their messy emotions and their chaotic biology, had no right to wield such power. They were children playing with a cosmic firearm, ignorant of the fact that the sound of its discharge would echo through forests full of predators they couldn't even imagine. Null 8 wasn't a saboteur. They were a mercy killer. The feedback loop they were creating was designed to overload the starfort's core, to make it collapse in on itself, creating a microscopic black hole that would swallow the entire facility and the dangerous knowledge it held. A clean, surgical strike. A necessary tragedy to prevent a galactic apocalypse. Their defenses are adapting. A synthesized voice reported from the ship's console. The field is reharmonizing. They are attempting to isolate the intrusion. They are clever children, Nullate murmured, their voice a filtered androgynous whisper. But they think this is a fortress. They don't understand that it's a bell. And they have just rung it, loud enough for everyone to hear. With a flick of their wrist, Nullate initiated the second phase of the attack. A logic bomb that would turn the starfort's own defensive protocols against it, forcing the anchor to try and stabilize a paradox, an impossible state of being that would tear it apart from the inside. The signal of that bell, the ripple in space-time from the starfort's activation, traveled faster than light because it didn't travel at all. It was an instantaneous change in the state of the universe. One moment, the Sol system was a quiet, unremarkable sector. The next, it was the location of an immovable object. Aboard the Vraxen Consortium flagship, Indomitable Will, alarms shrieked across the bridge. The ship's navigator, a being of pure crystalline logic, shattered into 1,000 pieces as its consciousness tried to reconcile the sudden, absolute impossibility of its charts. The sector they were traversing was now, according to every sensor, occupied by a solid, unyielding wall of space-time. High above, in the neon haze of the Zeta cluster, Kelvar trade envoys watched their hyperlanes flicker and die. The routes that had connected their vast economic empire for centuries suddenly led to a dead end, a place their fold drives could not comprehend. Panic, a rare and costly emotion for the Kelvar, began to spread. On the bridge of the Terran Alliance fleet cruiser, Sunbird. Admiral Kalen gripped the arms of his command chair, his knuckles white. His ship was light years from Earth, on a diplomatic mission to the Argolian Guild, but he felt the activation as a lurch in his gut. "Report," he commanded, his voice calm and steady, a practiced counterpoint to the chaos erupting around him. His science officer, a young woman with eyes that held the star-flecked wisdom of someone who had seen too much, too soon, struggled to make sense of her readings. "Sir, it's Earth. A massive, stable temporal distortion. Fixed coordinates. It's not a weapon signature, Admiral. It's not anything I've ever seen. It reads like a geographical feature, as if someone just built a mountain in the middle of the ocean." Kalen stared at the star chart, at the new, glaringly blank spot where his home system should be. He knew of Project Starfort. He had read the sanitized reports, the promises of an ultimate defense. He had dismissed it as the fantasy of earthbound scientists who didn't understand the brutal realities of interstellar politics. He had been wrong. "Open a channel to the Argolian Council," Kalen ordered. "Highest priority. Tell them. Tell them Earth has just changed the map. For everyone." Back on Earth, the control room was a scene of managed panic. The logic bomb had hit them hard. The starfort, designed to create stability, was now the source of a raging paradox. The hum was a scream that threatened to tear the facility apart. "It's a recursive loop," Aris yelled, his hands flying across his own console, trying to find a way in. "It's feeding our own energy back into the system, but with the polarity reversed. It's trying to force the anchor to be both here and not here at the same time. The core containment is starting to buckle." Elena shouted from her station. "We have minutes, maybe less, before it breaches." Valerius was frozen, his face a mask of terror. The man of action, the decider, was paralyzed by a situation that couldn't be solved with money or threats. Aris looked at the core, at the sickening, pulsing yellow light. He saw the fear in Elena's eyes, the panic in the faces of his team, and in that moment, he understood. They were thinking like engineers, like scientists. They were trying to fix a machine. But Starfort wasn't a machine anymore. It had touched the fabric of reality, and reality had touched back. It was alive. "Elena," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Stop trying to shut it down. We need to talk to it." "Talk to it?" she asked, her voice incredulous. "It's a quantum reactor, not a person. It's generating a field of pure, stable consciousness," Aris insisted, the idea blooming in his mind with the force of a revelation. "That's what the temporal delta of zero means. No past, no future. Just a perfect, infinite now. It's aware. The attacker is causing it pain. We need to show it how to defend itself." He began to type, not code, but patterns. He pulled up the data stream from the initial, stable activation, the elegant, spiraling blue web work. He bypassed the command protocols and fed the pattern directly into the core's energy matrix. It wasn't a command, it was a memory, a reminder of what it was supposed to be. Remember the peace. Remember the stability. The angry yellow light in the core flickered. The violent shuddering of the facility lessened for a fraction of a second. "It's working," Elena breathed, her eyes wide. She immediately understood. She began to isolate the other stable data patterns, the harmonic frequencies, the resonant signatures of the calm before the storm. She and Aris worked in tandem, a frantic, four-handed duet, playing a symphony of stability to soothe the wounded god they had created. They weren't giving it orders. They were teaching it a language. The blue light began to push back against the yellow. The discordant shriek of the feedback loop began to resolve into a clear, resonant tone. The Starfort was learning. It was fighting back. It isolated the attacker's paradox, not by trying to solve it, but by encasing it in a pocket of localized time, a bubble where the logic bomb would be trapped in an infinite loop, forever arguing with itself, but rendered harmless to the whole. The red line on the main display vanished. The klaxons fell silent. The violent shaking stopped. A profound silence descended on the control room, broken only by the soft, steady, bone-deep hum of the Starfort. The light in the core was a brilliant, unwavering sapphire blue. The anchor was holding. Null 8 watched their attack signature disappear from the display. It wasn't blocked. It wasn't defeated. It was contained, encapsulated. The Terran device had taken their paradox and turned it into a permanent, self-sustaining art installation, a monument to their failure. "Report," Null 8 whispered, their voice dangerously calm. The device is stable," the ship's AI reported, a hint of what could only be described as awe in its synthesized voice. "The energy signature is orders of magnitude more powerful than before. It is not just anchoring its own space-time. It appears to be broadcasting its stability, reinforcing the reality of the entire sector." Null 8 looked at the data streams, at the waves of pure, ordered reality propagating out from the Sol system. They had tried to destroy the bell, and in doing so, had turned it into a lighthouse, a beacon of order in a chaotic universe, a beacon that would attract the attention of things that swam in the chaos, things that fed on it, things that hated the light. "They have no idea what they've done," Null 8 said, a cold dread seeping into their voice. "They haven't built a fortress. They've built a target. In the Grand Council chamber of the Argolian Guild, a hall of polished obsidian and holographic star charts, Admiral Kalen stood before the assembled delegates. The Argolians, ancient, wise, and infuriatingly neutral, listened as he laid out the situation. "My government has acted unilaterally," Kalen said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "They have, without consultation, fundamentally altered the strategic landscape of this quadrant. I am here to tell you that the Terran Alliance takes full responsibility. We will share our data. We will work with you to understand the implications of this." Starfort. An elderly Argolian, his skin the texture of cracked parchment, raised a three-fingered hand. "Admiral, your fortress has caused panic and disruption. The Kelvar are demanding reparations for lost trade. The Vraxen Consortium is mobilizing its fleet, claiming you have deployed a weapon of galactic conquest. They do not see a fortress. They see a cage, with your Earth at its center, and the rest of us either locked in or locked out." "It is not a cage," Kalen countered. "It is a statement that we will no longer be pawns in the games of older, more powerful factions. We will not be a battlefield. We will be a sanctuary. A sanctuary can become a prison very quickly," the Argolian mused. "And your statement was almost a catastrophe. Our long-range sensors detected the feedback loop. We saw the paradox. We also saw the correction. Your device is more than a piece of technology, Admiral. It is unpredictable. And the galaxy does not reward unpredictability." Before Kalen could respond, a new alert flashed on the main holographic display. A Priority 1 message. Not from the Alliance, not from the Vraxens or the Kelvar, but from a deep space monitoring station on the edge of the galaxy. A station that had been silent for a century. A junior officer's voice, trembling with disbelief, read the message aloud. "Sirs, the station reports, it's a fleet, unidentified, massive. They are not using any known form of propulsion. They are moving between the stars as if the distance isn't there. And they are heading directly for the Sol system." The Argolian elder looked at Kalen, his ancient eyes filled with a new, cold fear. "It seems, Admiral," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "that your bell has been answered." Back on Earth, the celebration was short-lived. The relief of their survival was quickly replaced by the terrifying realization of what they had done. The Starfort was stable, more powerful than they had ever imagined. But it was also a beacon, shining a spotlight on a small, fragile world that had just announced its presence to the cosmos in the most dramatic way possible. Aris stood on the gantry, looking down at the serene, blue glow of the core. He could still feel its consciousness, a vast, silent, and powerful awareness. It was a guardian, born of human ingenuity and cosmic law. But a guardian implies something to guard against. Elena came to stand beside him. "We're getting messages," she said, her voice subdued. "From everyone. The Vraxens are threatening war. The Kelvar are threatening sanctions. The Argolians are concerned. And Admiral Kalen is trying to hold it all together." "They're scared," Aris said. "They see a power they don't understand, so they want to destroy it or control it. They don't see the real threat." "What is the real threat?" Elena asked. "The thing that attacked us," Aris said, his gaze fixed on the core. "Null 8. They weren't just a saboteur. They knew what this device could do. They tried to stop us because they were afraid of what it would attract. They failed, And now, something is coming. He looked at the data streams, at the steady, rhythmic pulse of the starfort. It was a heartbeat. The heartbeat of a newborn god. And it was calling out and into the darkness, a declaration of existence, a challenge to the chaos. The laughter had stopped. The fear had just begun. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it was also full of monsters. And Earth had just turned on the porch light. The incoming fleet did not announce itself with hails or warnings. It simply arrived. One moment, the space around the starfort's 100-kilometer perimeter was empty. The next, it was filled with ships that defied geometry. They were jagged, asymmetrical things, built from a material that seemed to drink the light, leaving holes in the starfield. They were the color of a bruise, of old, dried blood. On the bridge of the Sunbird, Kalen watched the tactical display, his face grim. The Argolian Council had granted him temporary command of their defense fleet, a gesture of solidarity that felt more like a shared death sentence. "They're not attacking," he observed, his voice tight. "They're just waiting." The Argolian elder stood beside him, his gaze fixed on the alien vessels. "They are studying the field. They are tasting it. These are the Cathar, the Devourers, an old legend, a ghost story used to frighten young civilizations. Seems the stories were true." "What do they want?" Kalen asked. "They feed on chaos," the elder replied. "On instability, on the energy released when systems break down, your starfort. It is the opposite of everything they are. It is an island of perfect order in their chaotic sea. They do not want to destroy it. They want to consume it." On Earth, Aris and his team watched the same images, their blood running cold. The starfort was the ultimate defense, but it was a passive defense. It could stop a missile, but it couldn't fight a fleet. "They're projecting a field," Elena said, her fingers flying across her console. "A decoherence field. They're trying to unravel the anchor to introduce noise and chaos back into the system." The steady hum in the facility began to waver. The sapphire blue of the core began to flicker with discordant flecks of red. The Devourers were not attacking the facility. They were attacking reality itself. "We can't fight them," Valerius said, his voice trembling. "We need to surrender. Offer them whatever they want. They want to eat our star system, Director." Aris said, his voice sharp. "It's not a negotiation. We have to fight back." "With what?" Valerius demanded. "The anchor is a shield, not a sword." "Then we need to teach it to be a sword," Aris replied. He looked at Elena. "The paradox, the one Null 8 used, the anchor contained it, isolated it. Can you release it?" Elena's eyes widened in understanding. "You want to? Weaponize the paradox? Fire it at them?" "The anchor learned to contain it," Aris said. "Maybe it can learn to project it. The Devourers feed on chaos. But this is a specific controlled chaos, a logical impossibility. Maybe it's poison to them. It was a desperate gamble, a shot in the dark. But it was the only shot they had. Working together, they accessed the contained paradox, the little bubble of insanity that the starfort had so elegantly encapsulated. They instructed the starfort, not with code, but with intent, with the language of patterns and harmonics they had developed in the crucible of the first attack. "This is a weapon. This is the enemy. Fire." The starfort responded. A beam of pure unlight shot out from the perimeter of the field. It wasn't a laser. It wasn't a plasma bolt. It was a targeted projection of unreality. It struck the lead Devourer ship and the vessel. Came apart. not in an explosion, but in a quiet, horrifying dissolution. The ship's own internal logic failed. Its systems ceased to understand their own existence. Matter and energy unraveled into a cloud of shimmering, nonsensical dust. A collective gasp went through the control room. They had done it. They had turned their shield into a weapon that fired pure logic. The remaining Devourer ships recoiled. They had come expecting a meal and had found a poison. For a long moment, they hung there in the darkness, silent and menacing. Then, as one, they turned and vanished back into the void from whence they came. Silence. The Sol system was safe. In the aftermath, the galaxy was a different place. The Vraxins and the Kelvar were silent, their threats forgotten. The Argolians were respectful, their neutrality now tinged with a deep and abiding fear. Earth was no longer a backwater, no longer a pawn. It was a major power, a power that could weaponize reality. Aboard the Sunbird, Kalen received a message. It was from Null 8. The transmission was a single, encrypted data packet. It contained detailed schematics of the Devourer fleet, their biology, their energy signatures, and a single line of text. The next ones will be worse. Be ready. Kalen looked out at the stars, at the fragile peace they had bought at such a high price. Null 8 was not an enemy. They were a warning, a Cassandra trying to prevent a future they had seen and feared. On Earth, Aris Thorn stood on the gantry, the steady, powerful hum of the star fort, a familiar comfort in his bones. It was a guardian. It was a weapon. It was a beacon. It was their burden and their hope. The galaxy was larger and more dangerous than they had ever known. But they were no longer laughing. They were watching. And they were ready. The age of humanity had just begun.